Good morning.
Morning. How are
Morning.
you? Hi,
Morning.
Karen.
How are you, Chair?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, okay.
Did you get a lot of rain?
A lot of hail.
Did you?
Yeah, we got some rain, wasn't too bad, but the hail was bad.
We didn't get any hail at all. We did get a steady rain.
Crazy. I guess
Mhm.
Carson is inundated with snow still, aren't you, Carson?
Still snowing here. We got about 2 or 3 inches.
Really? Really?
Oh, wow. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad you put the agenda up. My printer won't print for some reason today.
Well, I'm sorry the text is so small. Hopefully you can read it. I know there's a lot on there.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just glad it's there.
Looks like we've got a good amount of people on. Anytime you want to get started, Chair.
All right. Let's get started then, Karen. I'd like to bring the Smart Commute Metro North board meeting to order. Did you want to call roll or are we good with that?
I think Carson can see the roll. Can you see everyone who's here, Carson?
I am. Would you like me to call?
Sure. That's
Yeah,
fine.
let's do that. We've got Mike Sharotis as a guest today, and it might be helpful for him to know who's on with us today.
That's great. So go right ahead, Carson.
Sure. I'll call through and then maybe you can unmute yourself and just introduce yourself. I'll start with you, Joe Jean.
I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Chair Downing, I see you next.
Yes, I'm here.
Jean Putman.
This is Gene Putman. I'm here.
Pedro Costa.
Morning, I'm here.
I see Emily Latencio.
Good morning, Emily Atencio with St. Anthony North Health Campus.
Thanks, Emily. Jessica Sangren,
Good morning, Jessica Sandgren, Mayor Pro Tem, City of Thornton.
I see Ken Spangler,
Hi, good morning. Ken Spangler, Google.
and Deb Durand. I just saw you signed in. Thank you. With ACREP. Let's see. And then I see Mike Schroedis, and then somebody else from your team at Rotus, Simon.
Good morning.
And I just see Kyle Harris signed on as well.
Ready.
Morning.
I think that's it, Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda is approval of March 24th meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at them? Are there any changes?
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is the acceptance of April Treasurer's Report. Karen?
Thank you. I won't take long on this because we have a busy agenda. Just wanted you to see we have a pretty healthy balance as we always do at the beginning of the year. And if you remember last year, I put money into a savings account that will be used to pay down our obligation on the Flex Ride later this year. So if you have any questions on that, I sent it out to everybody. We still haven't gotten the NADA administrative fee and the NADA dues, and I know that they're processing that fairly soon. So that's in the outstanding invoices. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
Questions?
I see where you have the domain purchase. Has that been completed?
Yeah, and we've got that on the agenda to talk about in a minute.
Was it very hard to finalize?
Well, the the legal piece wasn't hard at all. And Carson worked with our people, and I think we're good to go. I guess we can jump into that. Carson, do you want to talk about what we have to do now? And we're going to come back to you with a plan for rolling this out, but Carson, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it. So the transfer was pretty easy. We just used our web hosting domain service group to essentially take ownership of that role. And that essentially looks like, right, they passed us ownership after the check was cashed, and we changed the passwords and all the information so they can't have access to it anymore. And it's all under our control now, that domain. All we have to do now is copy and replace everything on the Metro North website to that, which we'll have to get some help with, obviously, from our web hosting folks. And then there may be some other transferring that happens next, but those are kind of the next steps.
Thank you. Anything else from the treasurer's report? All right. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All righty. Okay, next on the agenda is the Smart Commute URL. Did you want to continue updating that, or is?
I think just to mention that we have had so much to do, we haven't really put a game plan for rolling it out yet. One of the things that we've discussed, of course, is to keep all of our legal name, any of our legal documents or anything to do with Smart Commute Metro North, keep it in place and change out our email addresses and refer to ourselves as Smart Commute instead of making all those very large legal changes, at least for the time being. So we'll come back to you later, maybe not next month, but the month after, with a plan on how to roll this out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mobility Hub.
Okay, well, I was going to call this section Executive Director's Report, and then I thought, I'm just gonna give you these updates, and it's from my perspective. Kyle had asked about the status of the Mobility Hub. A couple of things are happening here. First of all, we were able to get $1.5 million moved out of year 5 through 10 on the 10-year CDOT plan in order to do some early design, in order to do a park and ride and pull off for a 120X extension or 122 extension that's RTD service. They have said for years that they can't give us service because there's no way to get on and off that interchange in an expedient manner. And so this will help with that. The CDOT staff is looking at a redesign of that mobility hub. And I think there has been some mention in the past that the mobility hub definition is different than it used to be. CDOT is using a different kind of definition for mobility hub. And in fact, they have a handbook put together about what mobility hubs are. And we always envision a mobility hub as a juncture of a place where different kinds of mobility can come together so that it would accommodate passenger vehicles and trucks and all of the stuff that's driving through that area, but then have another section that would allow for buses and bicycles and charging stations and things like that. Sort of a very grand idea. And a lot of us have seen that schematic that shows a 3-tiered mobility hub. And we've been told that that's unrealistic and we're not going to get a 3-tiered mobility hub. One of the reasons we wanted a 3-tiered mobility hub is in order to monetize the 3rd level, which is the space above the intersection, because right now you can't monetize anything that belongs to CDOT. And there were quite a few discussions early on, and Mike Schroedis was in on those discussions, and Phil Washington and others who no longer are in that arena, on how we could do something significant there, so that that would be a real connection point for people coming into the Denver metro region at that area. So it would accommodate bus staying, it would accommodate RTD, it would accommodate bus rapid transit on east-west axis from Brighton to Boulder, that it would have a pedestrian area. It would have an opportunity to allow small shuttles to come in and pick people up from the regional buses and take them into both the west side development and the east side development, and had a pretty hefty price tag. So while we continue to look at what can that mobility hub be, there have been a few movements. We had Shoshana Liu up and looked at the area, and she's interested in how CDOT can help with the transit component, particularly the bus rapid transit piece that would go from Brighton to Boulder. And we've had discussions as late as yesterday on how do we make that happen, and where does that money come from, and what is the purpose of that bus rapid transit, and how does it connect to other things, and how can the bus stand come down and interact in that area. And then later today, Kyle and I and the city of Broomfield are going to have a meeting with RTD to talk about their piece of that mobility hub. So good news, bad news. Bad news is it's not anywhere on the radar screen for CDOT to pay for something like that. We need to do a diverging diamond. Gene's well familiar with that. That was his idea up there at Highway 7, and is still the preferred interchange architecture. But we hope in the next, I would say next 6 months, that we have a better plan about that mobility hub. There may be a possibility to negotiate with RTD and with CDOT to move that project forward, and we'll have another discussion with that after we have more discussions with CDOT and RTD, obviously. But it's still on the radar. The one significant thing is moving $1.5 million over that money was programmed for years 5 through 10 in the 10-year plan. And so we're pleased to get that. There's been quite a bit of change on State Highway 7 coalition project as well. And not a lot I can say about that yet, except that CDOT staff is looking to move some projects forward instead of just continuing with the design element for that lengthy roadway with problematic interchanges all the way along. So be patient with us and keep your fingers crossed, and we'll come back to you with more of what that progress on that mobility hub is. Sarah Grant asked for that mobility hub handbook. It's in a draft form, and I sent it to her, and we had a conversation about that mobility hub handbook. Doesn't really speak to what we envision up there, and we hope to bring some language to that draft that includes what we look for up at that mobility hub. It's not just a pull off for buses. It has so much more potential, and in fact should have more potential, because it's such an integral intersection of an axis between I-25 and State Highway 7. Be happy to take any questions on the mobility hub before we move forward.
Questions? I don't hear any, Karen. So
All
let's
right.
move up to legislative update.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
SB 200. So I don't know how engaged all of you are in the legislative process this year. It's kind of interesting. A lot of movement toward sustainability, greenhouse gas. Roadmap is out there, and Faith Winter and Dominic Moreno recently put together some legislation that establishes specific emission reductions requirements on different industries, transportation is included. Proponents argue the bill is necessary to accomplish the emission reductions goal on time, and the administration argues that the bill is too prescriptive in approaching the reduction. So right now, the administration's opposition to the bill also centers on requirements for Air Quality Control Commission to establish rules to meet the mandated greenhouse gas limits. And we feel at CDOT that Air Quality Control Commission shouldn't be making rules for CDOT. So that's still going through. The bill passed out of the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee on party lines, and we're going to watch this one. One of the reasons this is of interest to us is that it ties into something we're going to talk about in a minute, and that's the employee traffic reduction program that's percolating as well. And I'll give you an update on that in a minute. Just wanted to let you know that this is one of the important transportation bills that's out there and still moving forward.
Any questions? All right, let's move on to Senate Bill 238.
So this is the big one that's getting all the attention. It's a bill that seeks to create a large taxing district along the Front Range designed to govern and fund a passenger rail system. 12 counties and their municipalities would be included in this district. Upon passage of the bill, the district would have the authority to put funding questions on local ballots for voter approval, including a sales tax and/or lodging tax increase. It would also have the power to create new enterprises and station improvement districts with voter approval as well. District would take over for the existing Southwest Front Range Rail Commission created 3 years ago, and a new 14-person board would include 6 appointments from the governor and 8 appointed representatives from the metropolitan planning organizations, the MPOs along the Front Range. The district would be required to coordinate with RTD and the I-70 coalition as it progresses toward implementation of a rail system, and CDOT would have a position on the board as a voting member. CDOT supports it at a high level, recognizes rail as an option that can be used for the Front Range for greenhouse gas reduction. Many of us sitting on the board had participated with the Front Range Rail Commission stakeholders meetings in the past couple of years. There were 3 alignments that were put forward for Front Range Rail, and one of them comes down I-25. One of them goes from Longmont over to Boulder, and then from Boulder down to Denver Union Station, and the other one came down I-25 and swung over to DIA. What's interesting about this bill is it, in essence, allows RTD CDOT and Front Range Rail to put together a memorandum of understanding with the, I would say, the purpose of connecting Front Range Rail to Northwest Rail. So that's the alignment they're looking at, and not the I-25, which is, you know, something that's giving us a little bit of heartburn, because we always envisioned that the N line would connect over at State Highway 7 and I-25 eventually. And maybe as a, you know, a spur off of the 162nd connection. And that the mobility hub could be a true transportation hub. And it would finish off the N line, and that doesn't sound like it's going to happen. And last week at the Front Range Rail Commission meeting, they took a vote to support the Northwest Rail line alignment. And they took a vote to support Front Range Rail Commission Special District. And then yesterday it passed out of the Transportation and Energy Committee, and now it's gone to the Senate Appropriations Committee. We believe that the alignment is a done deal. And the chair and I are having discussions later today to talk about how does that affect the North Area Transportation Alliance's position, and how should we bring this information to NADA. There's been a request from the Northwest mayors to have NADA support that alignment. And so we really need to discuss this. I don't know how fast this will move, but CDOT purchased Burnham Yard, which is an area that's in the center Denver area. It's an area that could be beneficial to Front Range Rail and could connect to RTD. There's an area there that's a real bottleneck and needs some highway improvements as well. The governor's on board with Front Range Rail, and there's been some talk about Amtrak being involved. My understanding that if Amtrak's involved, they will have precedence over Burlington Northern, which has been the issue with the Northwest Rail in the service scheduling, because Burlington Northern has still uses that rail line for a lot of freight. And there's been an unsuccessful dialogue for years now with Burlington Northern on being able to use those tracks. I think the other thing is the state of Colorado believes that we are well positioned in the state of Colorado now to get some federal funding that's related to rail service. And all the stars being aligned, this is the time to go after something like a special district for Front Range Rail. So I see you have a lot of hands up. I'll go to our chair, our chair of NADA. Yeah, our chair of NADA. Jessica.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you. So I'm just going to say that there's several issues with this, and Karen, you're very nice about how you're presenting it, much nicer than I would probably be. As you know, we have not been engaged by anyone leading up to this decision that currently is happening. We know there's an MOU draft form with RTD, CDOT, and the governor's office. We know that this enterprise, we never had any conversation about it on this side of town. And as we know, it's another new project that would get funding before an existing project that's unfinished, again, on our side of the road. So I have a hard time supporting or even wanting to be involved in anything supporting something happening along that alignment when, again, we're not going to get our product finished. But maybe there's a way to leverage this so that we do get the N line finished all the way up to at least Highway 7. I think it's disappointing that we were not included in any conversation. It's disappointing that there was no environmental study done before they decided that this was going to be the alignment. It's just frustrating, again, to see something like this when, again, we have I-25 problems from 84th to 104th. We know there were 8 fatalities since August on our highway, but no conversation from that. I think we all want funding to come in from the federal level, but not at the expense of the entire eastern side of, I-25 on, not getting any sort of funding towards its unfinished projects. So I'm interested to hear what they present to us today to see how we might be able to support their project. But I'm starting to really lose any sort of faith that that's going to actually happen anyways. The constant promises, but no delivery. I don't know. It's frustrating, I guess.
Thanks, Jessica. I can't.
Gene
ahead.
Putman has his hand up.
Yes, I have two items. First, I agree with Jessica that it's nice that Amtrak can go over and beat up on Burlington Northern to get it to Boulder. That's been an issue from day one. And I believe that the alignment that was chosen by the Rocky Mountain Rail Authority study and CDOT's own study that would have gone up I-25 is a much better and cheaper outcome than going all the way over to Boulder. Secondly, I think after reading and looking at the Biden's transportation plan focusing in on Amtrak and the Front Range Rail, I think it's missing a very substantial link. It shows it going down to Pueblo, and there is a gap to be able to get it down to Trinidad so that you can connect in with the Southwest Chief and thus be able to connect 3 state capitals along the Front Range, Cheyenne, Denver, and Santa Fe, and provide a cultural and business linkage north-south along the Front Range. And the section that is missing is from Pueblo to Trinidad. There is an existing line there now with only 3 trackages a day at most. And I think that they need to include that extension. And I would hope that we could endorse that extension and filling in that gap of 85 miles. Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Joyce, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
So let's just say that this gets built and it's that alignment and everything gets finished. And even if the end line gets finished, let's say every rail system in the state gets completed, we still don't have a solution to our first and last mile or east-west transit. We still can't get around our communities, and we still can't get to the places in and around town that we all go. So again, I don't see the overall solution to transit and reducing congestion in our state unless it's just simply to go from wherever you are to downtown Denver. So in my mind, no matter what we do here, we're still not addressing the bigger issue, which is how do we reduce congestion and how do we get people where they need to go?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jessica. Anyone else?
Joyce, this is Kyle. Just
Go
wanted to
ahead.
make sure I'm just taking a step back, make sure I'm understanding the proposed alignment. So is it the case that if you live in Fort Collins and want to go to Denver Union Station, you go to Boulder first before going? That's seems obviously not a very smart way to go. And it almost sounds as though this going to Boulder is trying to, in some ways, mitigate the initial promises. Wasn't it with fast tracks? It was supposed to have a connection to Boulder. It seems to me that if you need both, you need the connection straight down I-25, you need the connection to Boulder. I don't know. I think it's a bit silly what they're talking about right now. So for what it's worth.
Thanks, Kyle. Anyone else?
I'd just like to offer, as these things move through, I get an update every Friday. If you want me to send my CDOT updates to you, if you're interested in having the latest update on any of these bills, we just deal with the transportation bills, but certainly it's a summary of what's going on. And if you're interested in those, I'm happy to send them out to you. I can send them to all of you and you can delete them if you don't want them. Or if you would just prefer that I send them to a few people, that's fine too. Just let me know what you're thinking here.
Sorry, Karen, one other question. I apologize. Did I understand that once all these alignments and coalitions have been established, inevitably this will go to a vote of the electorate for approval? I mean, can this project happen without going to the voters?
Yes and no. So it can come out of the legislature as a approved bill, but the special districts can't be formed without a vote of the people within those districts.
Okay, thank you.
And Kyle, to note, there is no stop, correct, Karen? There's actually no stop in that area. Where were the stops? It went from Boulder to Longmont to Denver.
Yeah, I think that's true. So what we saw was the proposal that was aligned with Amtrak, that it would go from Fort Collins to Longmont to Boulder to Denver. And there's no stopping there for Broomfield and there's no stopping there for Westminster. That's initially. And in talking to the chair of the Front Range Rail Commission, Jim says to me, those stops will get added and your alignment down I-25 will eventually get added and the one to DIA will eventually get added. So they're thinking this is the first phase of a 3-phased Front Range Rail process. But as we all know, many of us, Joyce and I and Jean and Joe Jean and others who have sat on these kinds of boards and authorities for years and years, it takes many years to get things done, and the political will changes as people are elected and termed out and all of that. So I'm not hopeful that our I-25 connection for Front Range Rail is going to happen, certainly in our lifetime.
Yeah. So let's back up. I would like to know, is anybody else besides Emily want to have the update sent by Karen?
I think we should all get it and then just delete it if we don't want it. I think it's important that we stay up to date, no matter what. It affects everyone, whether you're on this side or that side.
That's easiest for me. I'll just send it to everybody and it'll be the one that I get from Andy Carcian at CDOT. He's very good about putting in what's fact and what isn't. So
Great, thank you.
thank
All
you.
right, go ahead. All
I
right.
think going from Fort Collins through Loveland and Longmont, I call that the slow local. There are so many crossings down that line that I think you're asking for trouble, and to get around some of those crossings, building overpasses or underpasses is going to make it expensive. I would rather see the alignment stay basically along the I-25 corridor and then provide either bus or train connection like up to Boulder. And I think Longmont has looked at going out and having their connection to I-25 along 119. They have part of their community that goes to Boulder and the rest of their community goes down to Denver. And so they're kind of split as to which way is best. I think going along US 36 is going to be more costly, time consuming, and I don't think it's the best idea. And I, for one, Karen, where does this bill sit in the legislature?
It just got passed out of the Transportation and Energy Committee and it's gone to the Senate Appropriations. I would say you should write to Rachel Zenzinger, you should write to Faith Winter and Matt Gray. You should write to the Front Range Rail Commission and put your thoughts on paper and send it to them. It doesn't do us any good to grouse about it internally because we are not the decision makers. And so I think if you feel strongly about this, Gene, and obviously you do, and you have some points that are practical points, I would say put your pen to paper and send them all an email and tell them how you feel about this.
You know, I've already done that. I sent 3 messages to the Front Range Commission and got 0 reply. It's like they don't want to hear from citizens. And it's very disturbing.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's move on to the next, if it's all right. Let's move on because I told Mike and Johnny that at 8:30 we would give them the floor. So if you don't mind, let's go to their presentation, then we can come back and do ETRP after that.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Schroedis, and I've known Mike for a lot of years. He was the first HPTE director at CDOT and has always been engaged in our corridor with I-25 and Johnny Olson, who's on the phone already. I think you're on as well, Johnny. And I see Tim Harris, who used to be the chief engineer, and Johnny Olson, who was deputy CDOT director. And we've just known all these people for a long time. And we're excited at least to have this proposal in front of HPTE. And the good news is HPTE moved it from one of their processes into the next one. I got sent the flow chart of all the things you guys have to do in order to get to the end of the line. And you're just starting, but we're really excited to have you come and talk to us about this. And I'm sure that there'll be some questions. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks very much, Karen. Good morning, everybody. Some of you I have met, some of you I know, some of you I have not. So good morning to everybody. I'd like to introduce briefly before we get started, a couple of my colleagues, Simon Duranso and Fernando Herrera, both of whom work with me representing a company named Rotus Holdings USA. We have been working on this proposal with Johnny Olson and Tim Harris and his colleagues at Horrocks Engineering. Nobody knows this corridor in terms of transportation needs better than Johnny and Tim. Do you guys want to say hello, Johnny?
Hello, everyone. I've met several of you. Gene, you be nice to me today. It's been a while. But I'd like to thank you guys for having us. And, you know, I-25 has been a passion of mine for a lot of years. I used to go to a lot of NATA meetings and talk about I-25 with Reza and Paul. And I-25 is one of those things that I've made a commitment in my life that said, I am going to work on I-25 North, and that's what I'm going to try to get done for the people of Northern Colorado. And you guys are part of that Northern Colorado. It starts all the way down at segment 1 and it runs up to segment 8. You were all there when we signed the EIS in 2011, December, which I think was a great day. We were there when we built segment 2 and 3. So it's really a exciting time for me to be working with Mike, but thank you for having me.
Thanks, Johnny. That said, let me walk through this quickly. I hope you have on your screen the diagram of the several segments that people talk about I-25 North in terms of. Am I right that everybody sees that? In any event, in describing the proposal that we made several weeks ago to HPTE, after HPTE lifted the moratorium on unsolicited proposals for work on this particular corridor. So we viewed it as almost a solicited, unsolicited proposal. We got together with Johnny and his crew, took a look at the feasibility of accelerating the EIS proposed projects on this. As you all know, segment 1 has been operating for 20 years as the reversible lane down there. Segments 2 and part of segment 3 have been operating or are about to start operating. As I think Jessica mentioned, there's some real safety problems in those operating segments. Segment 3 extends only at this point to E470, and I think CDOT ran out of money before being able to extend the managed lane up to Highway 7. So part of our proposal would be to complete that extension. We would then move to segment 4, running between Highway 7 and 66, and extend the managed lane throughout that segment. Segment 5, let me jump to segments 6 through 8, which are being worked on now, fully funded by CDOT and within a year or so of completion. Once that combination of segments gets completed, we can then move on and tie the corridor together by completing a managed lane through segment 5. Our proposal envisions, much as US 36 did, a rapid transit, bus rapid transit priority in the express lanes running up and down that corridor between Fort Collins and Denver. We would, in the proposal, accelerate the construction of these infrastructure links that have been sitting on the table for many years. There, as Karen pointed out, there is much concentration these days on green projects, accommodation of electric vehicles, that kind of thing, and our proposal contemplates a full inclusion of those kinds of improvements. Best of all, what we are proposing requires no further CDOT financial contribution, which lets CDOT, I think, then complete projects which in its view have had a little bit higher priority, but given the ability for us to come in and get this done, I think it makes a good deal of sense to CDOT. We'll see. What did I miss, Johnny? What did I miss?
One of the things that we really want to focus on is, the segment 2 stretch and the segment 3. Didn't really complete segment 2. I mean, working with Gene and Reza many years ago to get that existing managed lane put in there with that reduced shoulder, it really helped the congestion in the area. But knowing that that's got to get an inside shoulder and it's got to have safety And I know NADA's number one priority for many years was getting the continuous acceleration lanes up and down the corridor in that area to keep people in that instead of coming in and out. It will really improve the safety of that corridor. Knowing that those criteria are important, but also just working with RTD and making sure these transit hubs, these new transit hubs are going to be a big part, especially in that segment 2 area of how do we do the connectivity. You can have a BRT system up and down this corridor, but if you don't have connectivity to those locations, they really don't function for a lot of the people, right? So you still got to get in your car, get to the hub. But if you have transit connectivity and working up and down the corridors, I think that's really going to benefit. And the whole EIS, this is basically based on the EIS that everybody is signed on for so many years. But having that connectivity from north to south and getting rid of the bottlenecks and the safety issues in 3 and 2, that I call that famous last mile in segment 3, the unfinished mile, right? We struggled with that back then, and we tried to find the money, and we all worked together, but that last mile just didn't get finished, and that's critical to this corridor to get the connectivity to move traffic. So those are some of the highlights, I think, in this area that are really going to be important for everybody sitting on this call.
Let me say that, as Karen pointed out, HPTE has a process for evaluating these kinds of proposals. And we were happy when it moved it into HPTE, moved the proposal into an evaluation phase. We are hoping that they will continue with that. We are not lobbying in particular for our proposal, but what we're trying to do is get the information out that this is a serious, feasible possibility at this point, connecting finally this corridor in accordance with the EIS that was done 10 years ago. And we want you to know about that. Glad to answer questions. You've got a full agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but we're glad to answer questions.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's Joe.
Yes.
Hey, hi Johnny, hi Tim, nice to see you guys. And Mike, you don't know me, but I was chairman of the commission back in the early 2000s, and on the initial what did we call it, Karen, when we first did the tolling authority? I forget what we even called it, but I was the first chairman of that tolling authority.
Yeah,
whatever it was. Yeah.
It was the Colorado Tolling Authority, I think.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Peggy Catlin was executive director. We all worked very hard to get this whole concept going back 25 years ago, 20 plus years ago.
No, you did.
If it wasn't for what we did back then with the governor and the legislature, and anyway, I'd be curious. So your proposal would be take over the entire management of this corridor from section 1 all the way to section 8, manage and operate that entire corridor. Is that correct?
Segment 2 to segment 8.
Okay, segment 2 to
segment 1. Segment 1 belongs to US 36, part of that project.
Okay, all right, okay, and again, part of what Johnny was mentioning, part of my concern would be the safety improvements. I know there's quite a bit of things along that corridor. I drive up to the Longmont corridor all the time from my daughter's house. There are segments that need pavement, new pavement design, new safety improvements, all those kind of things. I'd be concerned about trying to do this stuff piecemeal and get this done without doing a similar project to what US 36 was, where it's part and parcel, the entire corridor gets its full upgrade.
So, the first order of business is getting some of those safety improvements done in 2 and 3. It's an awful situation out there. You just You know, people get killed. It's awful. It's
Yeah,
awful.
I have to admit, I avoid that segment like the plague,
Yeah.
like the COVID.
Yeah.
I guess
Problem
we
with
can
it is
laugh
it can be
about
virtual.
that now. Yeah.
That's right. We drive it virtual.
Hey, are there any other questions?
Yes, this is Pedro Costa. Hello, Mike. Nice
Hi,
to see
Pedro.
you again.
Nice to see you.
So I was just, I'd like to congratulate your persistence and efforts trying to get this done. I think it's valuable, and I think it's a way to really try to accelerate and get things done. In involving private funding, I think it makes sense when there's no other options. Is this proposal and is it the terms will be similar to those that are currently in place for segment 2 in terms of HOV3? Or is that still all to be discussed as part of your talks with HPT?
Our expectation is that it would look very much like other express lanes that HPT runs in terms of HOV requirements. All of that can be discussed, but that's our initial, those are our initial assumptions, Pedro.
But is it a 50-year term, or is
That's discussable as well.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I just have one quick comment, and I know Karen understands this as well. In your diagram, actually, the 470 is actually on top of Northwest Parkway. So I just wanted to. I know that a lot of people don't really see any difference, but me being Northwest Parkway, I just take note of that.
I will make sure we make that change because I noticed it too, and I thought to myself,
The 470 is correct on the right side.
But Pedro, believe
that.
me, we know that, Pedro. We know
No,
that.
I know you do. It's probably the public doesn't, and that's probably what makes more sense for them. But it's been something that a sort of a small grievance that me and Karen has always.
we'll fix that grievance. We will not have that no more.
Thank you and congratulations, and nice to meet you, John.
Same here.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Looks like Gene has his hand up.
All right.
Hi, Johnny and Tim. Long time.
Yeah.
The reason I-25 is where it's at is back in the late 50s and 60s, there was a lot of the same discussions about where I-25 should go. And it was decided then to put it basically in the middle of Fort Collins and Greeley and all of these communities along the Front Range because there wasn't enough money to do one along the west side and one along the east side. So I-25 alignment was picked. I think the alignment is what needs to go forward, and I support this with one addition: an envelope for rail needs to be added. Then you have a full package, and I think it'll be easier to get funded. And even if it's a split authority, I still think that I-25 is the best answer versus going over to Boulder and up the back way, which is slower. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. Is there anyone else that has any questions?
I'd like to make a couple of comments if that's all
Yes.
right. One is, for us, the Highway 7 I-25 interchange is really important. It's supposed to be a diverging diamond. We're supposed to have a mobility hub there, and I understand that that's not part of your proposal. Tell us how this proposal benefits our need to do that diverging diamond and put in a mobility hub.
So would you like me to take that, Mike?
Go ahead.
So one of the things that's critical on this corridor is I think once we start getting the managed lanes in, Karen, and we start getting everything connected, then I think the State Highway 7 interchange, some of these other interchanges along the corridor will start getting more elevation. Right now, we all know, and I'm just going to be blunt, I'm not at CDOT anymore, so I don't have to dance the dance. There's not a lot of funding. This stretch from segment 2 all the way to segment 8 had not seen any funding as everybody else has got funding over the years. I think as we build this and as we put this together, it starts becoming more of meeting the current administration's needs of transit and mobile connectivity and stuff. So what I would say is if this proposal continues to catch legs and this proposal continues to move, I think the reason why we're out talking to the elected officials and letting people know that this is on the table is for you guys to start thinking, if this starts to move forward, what do we need to do to push these initiatives that they can then maybe come together with us? Because, you're going to get more economy of scale. If we start building this and somebody wins this corridor and let's say Rotus wins it and all of a sudden there's energy around the corridor, it's easier to bring money to the table now than it is to wait for 5 or 6 years and then lose the economy of scale. So the reason we're doing this is, one, make sure we have support, because one thing I've learned about this corridor, if you don't get support from the very beginning of segment 2 all the way up to segment 8, you're not going anywhere. That's why that 825 coalition came together. 2, once you get energy behind it and people start seeing the benefits to it and people start talking about it, I think that gens up money and people starting to see different things that they can add to it. So our proposal is not taking care of all the immediate stuff on the sides, just the main corridor, but that's where CDOT or locals or people can work and bring money to the table to start bringing more. And so 7's not off the total list. It's on our list, but we have to really focus on what we're going to do to connect the connectivity so other things can start to bloom.
Thank you. The second thing I'd like to ask you is, you have been up and down this corridor making presentations to the North I-25 Coalition and to others all the way up to segment 8. Can you tell us what kind of feedback you've been getting?
I think it's been good. We have done, I guess this is the second presentation we have done. We have another one scheduled next week. And again, what we're trying to do is to get the information out, see what people's view toward it is. I learned some valuable lessons in working through the US 36 project in terms of transparency and stakeholder interests. And we're trying not to make the same mistakes here as were made there. So it's in our interest to get the information out, collect various points of view. We recognize that HPTE and CDOT have their process, and we're not trying to take the decision away from them. We're hopeful, but we understand they are the deciders. But the beneficiaries of this are the people that we are talking to along the corridor, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, a lot of positive.
We're getting a good response.
Yeah, there's been a lot of positive thought. I've had a lot of electeds. I'm on several boards up north. I'm on NCLA. I'm on Fix I-25. So when I sit and talk with folks, I get a lot of questions. And one of the things that people always ask me is the details. And I'm like, if I give too many of the details, I can't win the project. So we could give so many of that's why we put this together to share. And like, people are saying, yeah, but what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, patience. And it's hard to have patience when something's out here like this, and elected officials want answers and they want input to what they want. So we also are getting a lot of information that's helping us grow our ideas too. But at the same time, we're given enough information that we can to make sure that people feel good. But the comments that I've really heard are segment 2 that I hear about segment 2. Are you going to fix the nightmare and the safety issue? Yes. Are you going to, because really from segment 5 up to segment 8, it's the 2+1, not the 3+1 that's in the EIS. When is the 3+1 going to come? When is the US 34, State Highway 7, State Highway 14 interchanges going to come? And those are the questions that are starting to pop up. But that's where the advantages of an RFP, if it gets to that page, we won't want to give too much of that information. We know they're there. We know that there's information there. We know there's things that got to be done. But the positivity has just been, someone's like, finally, we're going to get this thing finished. Because if everybody remembers, some RTD back many years ago left segment 5 for the last segment. There was many reasons for that because the other segments were falling apart and everything else. But the bottleneck there is going to cause significant problems. And this has to get done, or you don't have a continuous bus, a continuous managed lane and transit system. So it's really starting to gain a lot of positive movement up north.
What kind of conversations have you had with the Regional Transportation District who taxes us in this North Metro area for transit service, but the transit service only goes to 120th? And I know part of the EA that we all signed considered a center loading platform at 88th or a rebuild of the 88th bridge. Have you had conversations with RTD yet, or is it too soon?
We have, I'm not sure who's asking that question, but it doesn't matter. So the ROTUS group has had 3 or 4 over the last 6 months, I would say, conversations with RTD board members who have indicated a good deal of interest in having the completion of the North Line financed by ROTUS. And we have had invitations to go in and talk to the director, and have been asked to be ready for that when they invite us. And that's where we have been at this point. It's a project we would like to take a look at as being able to finance.
What about I-25, Mike? I think the I-25 piece, you know, we, CDOT and locals have had conversations with RTD about that center loading platform on that segment 2 piece.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering if the conversations have been with the Regional Transportation District service planners or anybody else who's looking at that center loading platform architecture on segment 2. Have you had those discussions yet? Those might be interesting discussions.
We have not. We have not. That is a discussion we're going to have when and if HPT moves this along.
We have some wonderful ideas for those.
Yep.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Looks like Gene has his hand up, Chair.
All right, Gene?
I'd like to suggest that for next month's meeting, we have a resolution that supports these improvements along with having the commuter rail along I-25 also. That way we will show our support, address Jessica's issue, and to have this body take a position on supporting these 2 items.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Jessica has her hand up.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Jean, I appreciate that. I would hesitate to take a stance at this point without having a bigger conversation with probably some of the other stakeholders in the region.
Kyle has his hand up.
Kyle?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm inclined to move with Gene's idea. Perhaps a little more information would be helpful, but it's hard for me to see anything here that would really be not supportable. And so my questions, I got a few. First would be, what does Rodas believe the political opposition, if any, where is that going to come from? Secondly, I have to think that you have a hoped for time frame when this gets implemented. So would love to hear what that is. And then thirdly, just to confirm what I think I heard in response to Karen's question, this design does not preclude the mobility hubs that are anticipated for the corridor. So I guess 3 questions there.
So let me start backwards. It does not preclude. And in fact, I think we will try to accommodate as part of the design. In terms of the time schedule, that depends totally on HPTE and CDOT. We're ready to sit down and start talking now, but they have a process, and we're trying to work with that. We expect to hear within the next 30 days whether they will move us along in the process. I should emphasize that regardless, our expectation is that CDOT will compete our proposal. So we are not expecting a sole source designation on this. You know, it would be nice, but we're not expecting that. And so we will end up in a competition at some point. Those take a while to put together internally. So we would hope, I think, to have a good idea of what exactly will happen when, sometime by the 3rd quarter of this year. And in terms of opposition, we haven't heard it yet.
The only opposition that I know that's going to be out there is the current environment to not add additional lanes. That has strongly been in the paper recently, and we need to add no additional lanes. We don't want to add lanes. We want to put more people in transit. Well, this corridor needs that lane to have a transit system. So it really, we don't know how that's gonna play out. But the current environment of reduction of GHGs, the electric charging stations, the mobility, connectivity and mobility issue, making sure it has a multimodal kind of concept, I think those are where the details will come in. So I want to sort of step through a little bit of the process. So they look at it from merit, right? Phase 1, and so it passed the merit phase. Now it's they're looking at is it valid? And then they ask us questions. So they bring a team together to evaluate the proposal in detail, and then they ask us questions. If they pass the HPTE board passes it after that team reviews it through it's valid, then it goes to an RFQ where they then go out and say, who's interested in this and what teams do you bring? If this goes to that phase, Rodas, that's the only phase Rodas won't have to do. So we're doing all the pre-work. We get to skip the RFQ, and then they go to the RFP, where then they start looking for ideas and all the details to see who's the best qualified, who brings the money, what are the ideas that are going to be presented, who's the teams. Then that process is where Mike's talking that we will have to compete. That's just transparency, and with the new transparency that CDOT's bringing to the table, it'll be very open and transparent of what's selected and who's selected. So we're doing a lot of the upfront legwork, Rodas and Horrocks, but at the end of the day, it will be a very heavily competed corridor, and who brings the most and the best proposal to the table. So I think the only opposition would be if that process didn't follow with the current environment down at the Hill of transparency and who wins it and who doesn't and why they won it, those types of things. But right now it's just out there. It's just in space right now, and it hasn't came down specifically to this. But the thing that Mike brought up earlier is there's been 19 proposals or 18 proposals are submitted to CDOT that never made it past phase 1 in the last 6 months.
Hmm.
So there's not any that have followed the full process. And all we're really looking for is follow the process. If we can get through the process, then we can compete. And then I-25 gets done. And that's really what we're really looking for now.
So Johnny, assuming that everyone follows the process, best case scenario for when there could be shovels in the ground, are we talking 2 years away, 3 years away, 5 years away? Just give us a sense of that if you could.
And it'll really be dependent on CDOT. But then the reason let me explain that why. So they go out with an RFP, then they got to put a contract process together. Let's say they go out with an RFP fourth quarter. That RFP will take 3 to 6 weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer. Then that takes six weeks to review. So you're into first quarter of next year. Then they have the review, and then the contract packages then have to be built. So you're realistically looking at contracts not being signed until about the fourth quarter of 22. And then probably by then, the contractors and the concessionaires will already be working on design. There's some stuff that already has some design. Segment 3's got 30% already. And then what happens is there'll be early projects that come out to get things moving quick. So if that December timeframe contracts are signed, there should be some design so contractors can start moving towards segment 2 or some of the finish in segment 3. Those would probably be the high level quick hits. So you're looking at shovels in the ground January of 23 if everything runs smooth.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Don't hold me perfectly to that, but that's a ballpark.
Gosh, this has been great, hasn't it, Chair?
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions for them?
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate the presentation. So
Thank you
interesting.
very much.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, Karen, did you want to go back to,
Just very quickly.
yeah, the trip
So-
reduction?
You bet. So the employee trip reduction program, or now they're calling it traffic reduction program. They've changed it a couple of times. I just want to give you a quick overview of this. It's the rulemaking goes to the Colorado Department of Health and Environment because of Senate Bill 1261, which called out this greenhouse gas emissions effort. And we've watched it at Smart Commute go from the Regional Air Quality Council to the AQCC, the whatever that acronym is, to a piece of that to CDPHE. So it's been moving forward, and they've held a lot of stakeholder outreaches. Our staff have put hours and hours and hours into this, trying to influence some of the rulemaking in order for it to be practical and not just general. Because right now it's a big general rule that doesn't accommodate for the uniqueness of employers, the way they do business, where they're located, whether they're near transit, whether there are options, whether it's an employer that can do telework, whether it's a service industry employer, any of those kinds of things. And what we know today, and I'm going to take Catherine's notes here, and you might have to correct me, Catherine, if I'm wrong, but what we know is they're targeting employers of 100 or more in the non-attainment area, which is the Front Range. And that will be the first push on this. In January, this is the anticipated timeline. This next January 2022, employers must register. In February, employers must declare an employee transportation coordinator. We call those ETCs. We often work with ETCs in the relationships we have with employers, but they must, all 100 plus employers must declare an ETC. In April, employers must report survey and data results. And those kinds of survey and data results are things that we're very familiar with, in that we look at origin destination travel sheds to try to figure out if people are close to transit, if there's clusters that can carpool together, those kinds of things. If we'll probably know how many employees can telework, what kind of a program the employers have in place now. And then in June, employers must submit an employee traffic reduction plan to the state. This is very, very aggressive. And it's going to take an awful lot of hand-holding. And we at the TMO level, there's 7 TMOs in the Denver metro region, but there are other organizations similar to TMOs that will be affected by this. You know, they're looking to us to do the heavy lifting to make sure that we can be a resource for employers and that we can handhold them and help them put these plans together on top of all the things we already do. And so our issue has been that we need some funding to do this. And I think we don't know yet, but we suspect there may be an opportunity to get some more funding. One of the things that's been interesting to us is the Denver Regional Council of Governments Way to Go program have really jumped on this and said they want to be the turnkey resource guide. And we do their work. We do their work. They don't do their work. The TMOs do their work. And so it's been kind of interesting. And they recently sent out this list that I shared with my employees, with my staff. And they show that these different TMOs, from Denver South to West Corridor to us, to Cherry Creek, to, Commuting Solutions, to Northeast Transportation Connections, they show how many square miles each of our organizations. So I'm just going to tell you about Smart Commute. So Smart Commute has 345.99 square miles of service area. Now that's the biggest in this whole area, but we don't have a large population. So that doesn't really relate to anything much other than to see, like, Denver South has 12.36 miles and Downtown Denver Partnership has 2.39 square miles. So anyway, then it's suggested to us that Smart Commute has 39,680 large employers within our area. I say we probably do 120 employers now in outreach, maybe a little more than that. And then they have 173 large employers of 100 plus employment. And so what they've done is they've looked at, where are we located? And these are just statistics. They don't break down what kind of employers these are. We have a lot of industry kinds of employers. The whole Commerce City area is a logistics center. And I've been contacted by the Colorado Motor Carriers Association, who said, we have people who don't park their trucks at home. They come from home, 3 o'clock in the morning, they go to where their trucks are. It's a distribution area. And then they start in a non-attainment area and drive out of a non-attainment area, right? So how does this pertain to them? And shift work, just the whole thing is a little bit chaotic in my mind. And when we have given input to CDPHE, they have maintained that they want it to be simple and a rule that fits everything, and they don't want to get into the specifics. And so a little bit concerned about what's coming down the pike. CDPHE is going to come and talk to Adams County Regional Economic Partnership next week. May 6th. Yeah. And Broomfield Chamber on May 18th. So it's fast moving. It'll be interesting to see what's required. It doesn't seem to matter I shouldn't say this probably, but it doesn't seem to matter what the stakeholder input is. They've made up their mind on how this is going to work. And so even at the TMO level when all of us EDs get together and talk about the impact this is going to have on how we do our jobs and how much work it's going to add to what we already do. It's fairly interesting. So I see a couple of hands up. That's all I'm going to say about ETRP unless you have some questions. And I see Emily is on and then Jessica.
All righty.
Good morning. So I just wanted to share from our perspective that if this passes for our organization, is going to be very difficult. We employ about 1,000 people in the North area on 144th and I-25. Which, we struggled a little bit with getting the RTD up here. We have the flex drive. We're very thankful for that. But I have been working with you guys trying to implement something like this for our campus. But when we have nurses who work 24/7 and if they have a patient who is difficult or someone's running late, they don't have automatic times that they get off. So carpooling really isn't an option for healthcare professionals because if there's an emergency, they have to stay through the end of that emergency. If this passes, it's going to be a huge challenge for our organization to meet these requirements, given our location and not having the RTD service in this area that we would like, and given our industry. So I just want to make that known to this group, that this is not something from an organization that we can support because it doesn't meet the needs of our community to be able to care for our community, given we work in emergency medicine. So just want to throw that out there.
Thanks, Emily. Good points. All right, Jessica.
Thank you, Emily. Everything you just said is what we hear in pretty much every meeting from every industry. And as Karen already stated, the stakeholder input doesn't seem to be having much of an impact. So I guess for us, especially up here when we don't have transit options, when you think about families trying to get kids to school and then having to get to work, a carpool may or may not work, probably not so much up here. We know Commerce City and Brighton don't have any transit service. So we're still puzzled by this as well, wondering if it's, going to be a carrot or a stick. And for those of us who don't have many options, what kind of incentive could we get if we did figure it out, rather than will we be penalized? So I don't think anybody has a clear understanding of where this is really going, but there is definitely a lot of uncertainty and fear in every committee meeting and pretty much everywhere that I've spoken with. Adams County, Jefferson County, it's coming from all over. So it's not just us locally, but there's a lot of uncertainty about this.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica. Are there any other questions?
We'll keep you up to date as it moves forward. I suspect when ACE-REP has their presentation, you've got a lot of employers that go to that, and I suspect they'll get a lot of comments. So that's great.
Yep. Okay, we've already had the presentation. So Bike to Summer.
Bike to Summer, I'm going to turn this over to Carson. I think you and Catherine are tag teaming this one.
That's right. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on where we are with Bike to Summer and some of the things that have firmed up since last month in terms of our planning for the summer. So we've decided on a series of monthly themes that we're going to bring around some events throughout the summer, which I'll mention here in just a second. These are the themes that we're going to be hitting on throughout the summer. May is going to be I Bike with Friends. June is going to be I Bike Alone, because there's some virtual events happening that month that we're going to participate in, and it fits nicely. July will be I Bike My Neighborhood. August will be I Bike with Kids. There's a couple of bike rodeos, kind of kid-friendly events that month that fit nicely. And then, of course, September is I Bike to Work because of Bike to Work Day being September 22nd this year. These are our events that we have identified throughout the summer and we're going to be partnering with. I'll just say that the ones that are underlined are the ones we would like to make our featured event or events for the month with those monthly themes that I just mentioned. So, for example, North Glen's Full Moon Bike Ride later in May, we're going to promote that as an opportunity to get out and bike with friends. And then baseline, Kyle had a great conversation with some members of your team not long ago, and we're working on a Trail Days event there in the development and on June the 5th, and we're excited about that and looking forward to it. So that'll be one of our featured events, an in-person event, but we're going to promote it through the lens of iBike Alone, because some of the other events like Broomfield Trail Days is going to be virtual this year, as we understand. So you can see those as we go through kind of the months. A lot of Brighton and Northglenn full moon bike rides, which present great opportunities. We're going to promote every single one of those, all kind of culminating toward the end of the summer in Bike to Work Day, with a TBD on October, mostly because of weather. We don't know what that might look like right now. If any of you would like to attend these events, we encourage you to do so. Please reach out to me or any of us, and we'll give you some information. We'd love to have some folks out there biking. There's a lot of events. We're trying to do one in every jurisdiction, as many as we can. So we'd love to see you out there participating if you can. Yesterday, we had a biking health expert come and do a short interview. Thank you to, I don't see Emily on here anymore, but Emily for her introduction to Sue. It was a 6-minute video talking about some of the health benefits as we get kicking off our summer bike campaign. It's on YouTube now on our YouTube page. And we'll be promoting that throughout the summer as a good little resource to encourage folks to get out there and improve their health by biking. We're going to be doing some monthly themed e-blasts. You'll be seeing these come through, and we'd ask that you check them out if you'd like to. This is our draft one for May. So we're going to be featuring Northglen's full moon bike ride, as I said before. That's kind of our signature event. And we're also going to be doing something called an independent share your story challenge, where if you share your story online about biking, challenges, good or bad, you can be entered for a Shine On Bike Light that we have had co-branded a couple of years ago with RTD. Just to follow up on kind of how we're engaging at these events, this has shifted just a little bit, but not much, right? So we're still going to have the traditional tchotchkes and prizes there. We're going to have a build a bike map display, and Dr. Cog is going to create those maps as we go through each community, right? So we're going to have a regional view so people can see the full region and identify connection issues. But then if we're in Broomfield, they're going to have a Broomfield specific map with trails, and hopefully people can identify where there's issues in that area. So that's exciting. We're also going to do a My Biking Wish collaboration board just with post-it notes, right? Like, I'd love to see better connections. I'd love to see more bike trails, those kind of things, so we can provide feedback to each jurisdiction. And then we'll have some virtual participation. One of those is the Share Your Story I just discussed with an entry for a bike light. And another one is something I'm going to let Catherine talk about a little bit, is something called Google Jamboard, for an opportunity for people to share ideas collaboratively online and mimic this build a bike map display in person. So I'll click off to that, and hopefully we can see it as she makes some edits.
Hi, you guys can hear me, I assume?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is intended to be a virtual version of what we're going to be doing at events. This board gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of interaction that we can have with people on this board. They can do typing, they can add sticky notes, they can physically mark things on the map and draw. I'm using a laser pointer so it disappears. And Carson, if you click over to the next map, something else that we can do with a Jamboard is we can provide a very detailed zoom in on like a local map level and let people engage with it. So this gives you an idea of what people could potentially do with this virtual Jamboard. So it's meant to be another way for us to collect public comments, public feedback, do some engagement for folks that aren't going to be showing up at our in-person featured events or any of the other events that we're going to be staffing. So it's meant to be very simple. It's not like the amazing public engagement tools that we see that happen with project development and plan development, but it should be suitable to collect the kind of information that we'd like to engage with people on.
I think that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions, of course, at this point.
Sure. Any questions for Carson or Kathy? Catherine? I don't hear any, Carson. All right, thank you. All right.
Thanks.
Let's see, grant pursuits?
Yeah, I can take this one. Just wanted to give you an update that we're still working through a contract with Can Do Colorado e-bikes program. And this one will, and I think you asked me last time, Joyce, about how many bikes we were going to purchase. And originally 10, and then another 20. So 30 bikes altogether, and all of this extraneous stuff that comes with the bikes. So it would be, you know, the whole package, the like helmets, the repair kits, all of that. And there will be training for the people receiving these bikes. The bikes are targeted for, I want to say, not low income workers, but economically challenged, maybe people that live within 10 miles of the I-25 144th intersection area, for that group of employers there, from St. Anthony North to Amazon to the Orchard to Denver Premium Outlets. And we should be able to get bikes underway probably around May 10th. And I'm hoping that next month we'll have Jean Shreve come and talk to you about this program. She's done some pretty amazing stuff. It's a loan to own. There's a $250 deposit that goes back to the bike owner after a certain amount of time. And she is looking for scholarships for those, so that these low income people don't have to actually give us $250 for a deposit, that they'll be given scholarships to do this. So that's underway, and it's part of our Flex Ride grant program that called out money in there for multimodal options for first and last mile. And so this e-bike grant program came with a local match requirement, and we're using the grant money from the Flex Ride as the local match. So there's no out-of-pocket cost to Smart Commute. And as another piece to this, I just want to say we're really super excited. We've been working for a year and a half to try and get Sunday service on the Flex Ride. And at last week's RTD board meeting, the board approved Sunday service for our 144th Flex Ride. And we're very excited about that, because as you know, that 4-quadrant area, and as Emily so well articulated, you know, a lot of these people have 24/7 jobs. The shift work is 24/7. It's part of the time, and it's not like a regular commute, white collar job where you go in at 8 and leave. So really excited to have this Flex Ride extended into Sunday hours as well. And as we try to extend the Flex Ride over to the new Amazon over by 162nd and Huron, that Sunday service is an important addition as well. So pretty excited about that. Wanted to tell you that. And then the other one that we're fairly sure we're getting, we've had very positive back and forth, and I could defer to Catherine on this, but it sounds like we are in fact going to get the wellness and ergonomics telework, because they keep telling us, yes, we're moving it through the process. Here's a question for you. We answer the question and they say, we have every intention of funding this. So hopefully we'll have more to tell you next month about that. But that's an exciting one, because there's no out-of-pocket cost to us. And we have already engaged with a physical therapist who's going to help us put those 15-minute videos together that will be piloted and looked at by the Brumfield Chamber group to tweak it and make sure it does what it's intended to do. And then we're going to finalize it and send it out to NADA or any other organization who wants it. And it has to do with ergonomics at your computer, how to have a physical well-being and mental well-being as we all work remotely. for the extent that we do work remotely. I have to say the other day at 6:30, somebody sent me a note and said, can you look into this? And because I'm in my living room and my office is around the corner, I went to my office, turned on my computer and took care of that. So I'm not working 8 hours a day. None of us are. Because we're at home, we're responding to things that we normally wouldn't have done in the past. We would have just said, well, I'll get to that tomorrow when I go into the office. So there's a lot of telework fatigue, and we're hoping to address that. And I'd be happy to take questions. If I can't answer, Catherine can.
All right then. Any questions?
Okay.
All right, let's move on, Karen.
So talking about telework fatigue, there's 5 of us who work at Smart Commute, 2 of us full-time and 3 part-time. And we've just found that it's very difficult to be as productive just working from home. And we're hoping to do a hybrid maybe in June or so. Hopefully in June or so, that we can maybe meet once in a while, particularly the staff people who are working part-time feel out of the loop by not having this connection. And, there was a lot of great synergy between us and getting things done and clearing up challenges but I need some office space. I don't have any office space. We lost our office space from Adams County, and we don't have it in our budget to pay for office space. So if any of you that are still on the call know of any office space we can get, we probably don't need very much. We don't need it 5 days a week. We would like to have office space. And I'm not talking about conference space. I think we can find conference space. We're talking about actual workspace where we can bring our computers and sit in and do a whiteboard and try to do some of the brainstorming that we used to do before that's so much more difficult to do on a virtual platform like this. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then finally, I wanted to say for May, I'd like to invite Jim Suby, who's the new chair of the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, to come. We might also invite David Singer from CDOT's Department of Transit and Rail to give us an update on what's happening. In May, we should have more information about this Front Range Rail District and what does it mean and that sort of thing. And then I'm hoping that Jean will be able to come and give us an e-bikes program update and Flex Ride. And then Jean has suggested a resolution, but I think it's maybe premature to do a resolution until those of us who represent other agencies have a chance to talk to those other agencies. And then finally, I'd like to say, Chair Downing and I have had a discussion about Jean Putman, who's up here in our Hollywood squares at the top. And Jean is the only one of our board members who pays an individual fee to belong to Smart Commute, which is ironic because Jean really was the initiator of getting a TMO started. He worked for Thornton at the time and put together a grant creating this, we used to be called the North Area Transportation Alliance Transportation Management Organization, which was quite a mouthful. And he worked diligently to get this in place. He's been a strong supporter. And Joyce and I feel, because of all the things that Jean has done for so many years, that we'd like to make him an honorary lifetime member of Smart Commute and no longer accept his money. It seems silly for him to continue to pay into Smart Commute. He doesn't represent an agency. He doesn't represent a business. He doesn't, he's a citizen who wants to make a difference. And so we'd like to suggest that Jean Putman be given an honorary lifetime membership in Smart Commute. That's my report.
All right then. Did you want some conversation concerning the membership? Anybody have any comments or?
Should we make a motion and just approve it? I'm in favor.
That would be in order. Yeah.
Go ahead, Pedro.
Okay, I'll move the motion to approve an honorary membership to Jean Putman.
Thank you. I'll second that. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Congratulations, Jane. Thank you. And really, thank you for all the hours and years that you have put in to making transportation, what it is today, and more to come. So thank you. All right. Do you have anything else, Karen?
I think I just want to reiterate that I'll be sending you on Friday afternoons the CDOT legislative updates on transportation. I also think I'll send you the CDOT process of how an unsolicited proposal has to go through the different steps, because I think you'll find that very interesting. And just ask if there's anything else I promised you to send you that I didn't write down here.
We'll definitely reach out to you.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else from the board, then we are adjourned. Thank you
Thank you
so
very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.